Welcome to Bator International's Classic Online Motorcycle Sales. Today we're going to be working on Chapter 17 of the restoration of the 1957 Harley Davidson XL Sportster engine number 3100. Today we're going to be rebuilding the rear wheel spool hub. We'll also be putting new rivets into the brand new rear sprocket. And then I think we're going to go ahead and jump on installing the gas tank and the rest of the sundries. And again, we're still waiting for the plating, so hopefully it'll come soon. So stand by and keep an eye out on how well we are progressing. The first step in the process is we're going to go ahead and install the bearing and all the spacers into the left side of the actual hub itself. There's a thin washer, an open end bearing, a little spacer, and then you have the what I'll call the end nut with the two little flats. Later on they came out with this seal. On the early bikes they didn't have them, but if you have one with a seal it'll work. If you have one that doesn't have a seal, that'll also work. And I also have this cool old tool. I don't know exactly who made it, how long I've owned it, or whatever the case is, but after you have everything assembled, it actually will grab that nut and tighten it down. So we're going to go ahead and install this now, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the right side of the hub. Here's the little special tool that I have for putting on that one special nut on the hub, and I'll show it to you here. Basically you slide it over the shaft, you'll hear it set in place. There it is. Then basically you take your hub and you tighten it up, and that basically gets your spool side nut tight. Now on the other side, your sprocket side, or the brake drum side, there's two different styles of bearing setup that they had back in the day, sort of an earlier style and a later style, as you see in this diagram here. On the earlier style, this was a really complex needle bearing with a spacer and a dust shield. Now the later one basically had an open bearing, a little spacer, and then a one-sided enclosed bearing, and that was it. And that's what you're looking at here. After I installed this bearing, I go ahead and throw a couple of punches in just to keep the bearing set. But this one actually sets itself and doesn't want to come out because it's sort of held in there with the dust shield and that big external, or the OD on the large bearing. So there you have it. The rear wheel hubs are done and ready to go. Okay, moving on to the sprocket. I'm about halfway through it right now, and basically you want to make sure that the indentation of the new sprocket is facing outward towards the actual brake plate. And you go ahead and set your 4 rivets first that are the larger diameter, as you see here, and my kit did not come with 4, so I'm going to have to put just a regular rivet in one of the holes. So you set these 4 through first, and then check all of your through holes for the actual rivet. Check your diameter and see if they'll fit. If they don't, then go ahead and get yourself a drill bit that's a few thousandths under size of the rivet, and then just go ahead and chase all your holes to make sure that they're all in a line. Because again, sometimes they do not come perfectly aligned, so you just have to drill the holes, make sure they're all good. So like I mentioned, we're halfway through it right now. I'm going to go ahead and continue on. And basically all I'm using is my carpenter's hammer, a punch, and I set it up over here on the edge of my vise. I got the blue tape on there so it doesn't mess up the paint. And then just go ahead and hit the end of the rivet until it smashes over adequately enough to clear the actual brake drum. And that's pretty much it. Well, we've gotten as far as we can with regards to hanging everything onto the frame here and waiting for the plating. So what we're going to do is turn our attentions towards the gas tank, fenders, and so on. Now on the rear tail light, as you can see, I have it taped up here, and you're going to ask me why, and I'll tell you. The inside of the actual tail light bracket should be painted black. So I have this all taped off. I'm going to go ahead and shoot it black through this hole here, and then I'll go ahead and start the reassembly on the internals. On the exterior of the actual shell itself, once you pull the tape off and you go to mount your reflector light or the clear lens, the little screws that go left and right of this lens also have to be painted in the pepper red. So you can put a couple aside, paint them with a brush or whatever the case is, and then do a little touch up on them if necessary when you go to install them by hand. So we'll go ahead and get that done and then move on to the next step. I know when we're doing the restorations, we get quite anal with regards to all the little details. And here's one that basically it falls right in line with that. The actual plug wire that I have in my hand here was the wire that came with this bike. You can see the difference in the head of the actual plug wire. This one here is molded, and it tapers all the way down to the actual wire. This one actually has a little bit of a shelf or a lip or a 90-degree cutoff there, and this one here is the wrong one. Now these are the proper ones, and these are actually molded off the original type that were used back in the day. We do actually sell these, so if you're looking for a pair of proper plug wires, we do have them. So you know my numbers, just give me a call. I don't know if you remember, but when we purchased this bike, it was a poorly restored example. So we're touching base on everything, including the paint work on the existing tank. The actual paint was not bad on the gas tank itself, but of course there was no attention to detail whatsoever to the underside. So what we're going to do is we're going to tape this off and reshoot the bottom portion of the tank black, again, just to bring it up a step or two. So we're going to get this done. We're going to go ahead and tape off the rest of the paint so we don't get the overspray and get that shot. Our tail light lens is drying nicely, and we'll pull that tape off here in a little bit and start assembling that as well. All right, since we have the bottom portion of the gas tank painted now, I went ahead and installed it onto the frame. And the hardware, the actual through bolt is Parkerized, and they call for a 3 1/4 inch bolt front and rear, but actually a 3 1/4 bolt will not work for the front. You actually have to have a 3 1/2 inch bolt. The Parkerized bolts with the big CAD thick washers, and the CAD lock nuts, pinch nuts, whatever you want to call them, on the other side. We also installed the seat tee, and again, this is just a standard nut with a locker behind it, Parkerized, with the through bolt being CAD. So that's all correct. And I also have the tail light drying, and when I say drying, you actually have to paint the little screws the exact same color as the body of the tail light. I installed the clear lens with the gasket, and you can also see I have the interior of the tail light itself painted black, as it should be. So it's coming along. I think the next step is I'll probably go ahead and install the front fender, get that on. And oh, very, very good news. I heard that my plating is going to be done in 2 days. So I'm going to be running up to Pismo to grab it. And so after we get that stuff back, this project is going to go along much quicker. So looking good. Oh, here's the other one. This Don Chastain actually built this bike. Did a great job. So we'll have a pair of twins here after I get this one all done. The Chastain bike is actually sold, and it's going to Australia. So they are, as soon as I get them in the door, they fly out. The seat that I have for this project is a very nice solo seat. It has the correct white stitching around the rim, even though this is not, what can I say, dead to nuts to the original seats. Can't find a dead to nuts seat. So this is actually from Heather's Leathers. It's a very nice example, and I will use it, and I feel very good about it. Problem with it is when this bike came in, as you can see, it has an aftermarket seat tee, basic Taiwan Ted special. So I went ahead and got an original one, and so this one's going to have to go. All the chromed hardware is wrong, the spacer's wrong, So I'm going to go ahead and swap that all out. Colony does make a saddle bar to seat mounting kit, and it has all the correct items. Now there's a little bit of controversy here. I see in the kit the spacer for underneath the front seat T is actually Parkerized. Looking at the museum bike in Milwaukee, this should be CAD plated. So at least that example does have a CAD plate. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can find some CAD plated spacers like that in my pile of stuff, and we'll go ahead and get this all dialed in on the new seat T. Okay, the new voltage regulators came in. As you can see, I have this one all mounted up. And you can see I have Finalizing head screws there. They're 832s. And when you go to buy these aftermarket ones, you'll see that they have a what I'll call a combination Phillips flathead screw for the covers, and also the same for the actual mounts themselves down here on the terminals. But you have to have Finalizing heads, and I think these are even metric threads. So I drilled them out, tapped them for the 832s, and also if you take a look at it, this is what comes when you buy the aftermarket ones. This is what you want for a restoration, the Delco Remis. So after you're all done, after you got the gasket on, put the Delco Remy cover on, you're bang on. Also, again, here are the screws, and off the old Delco Remis, I have a couple of the proper round-headed screws. I don't know if the threads are exactly the same, but it screws down and it works perfectly fine. So there you go for the voltage regulator. Well, now that we have the gas tank installed, as you can see, and the seat installed, which looks quite nice, all the proper hardware, I went ahead and threw on the fuel line, and these are the proper clips here that you'll want to use for that if you do decide to use clips. Like I mentioned, you can install the line without the clips, and that is also very acceptable. And guess what? The chrome has arrived. Dun, dun, dun. I'm so happy. I'll tell you what. It was a 300-mile round trip for me yesterday. I was happy to do it. But we're going to go ahead and start installing all of the shiny bits here very soon. So what we're going to do is we're going to call this a wrap on Chapter 17. I want to thank everyone for bearing with us on the restoration. It's coming along quite nice. I'm quite happy with it. And every time I do one of these, they get just a little bit better every time I wrap one up. Again, this one is coming along quite nicely, and very, very happy with it. Again, I want to thank the help of Dave Carlton. He's always a good sounding board for all these little what can I say, nuances if I'm not sure on any of these things. And I'm also getting help from Gary Moses. He actually had provided me with these beautiful nuts for the actual oil feed line. I'm very happy with those. So I've been waiting for those. And also the, what do you call it, the little pincher here for the oil line itself. So he had these made. Machinist did them for him. So I was very happy to get those. I don't know if he has any more, but needless to say, thank you very much, Gary. So again, I want to wrap this segment up, and our next segment will be hanging all the pretty stuff on the bike, and hopefully be wrapping it up very, very soon. We're getting close on time, but again, thank you everyone for continuing to watch what we're doing. I hope it's beneficial, and we have been getting some feedback with people liking what we're doing, so I'm feeling pretty good about it. So again, I hope you enjoy what we're doing, and on to Chapter 18.